Thank you for coming.
Good morning. We're Bill and Lynn Limpert. We're retired. Like most folks, we've worked hard and followed the rules. Recently, we bought retirement property and built a home in Little Valley, Bath County, Western Virginia. It's the most beautiful property we've seen. It's all wooded, and much of it is very rare, uncut virgin forest. We were notified last February that a change in the route of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, or ACP, would cut our property in half. If approved by FERC, our property would be taken from us by a private corporation through eminent domain. It would reduce the virgin forest to a 3,000-foot long and 125-foot wide scar next to our home. This is the first tree on our property that would be cut. It's a sugar maple 12.2 feet in circumference. Many, many similar trees would follow. Blasting up to 35 feet deep through bedrock would occur very close to our home and all across our property. We would be well within the 2,200-foot blast zone of this pipeline, where we would be incinerated in an explosion. Our well water could be polluted or completely cut off with no liability whatsoever to the ACP. Our property value has already dropped $250,000. We will be forced to abandon our retirement home, and it will become a toxic asset if this pipeline is constructed. We just cannot live in fear of the pipeline exploding or witness the destruction of our beautiful land. I contacted FERC early on. I was immediately dissuaded from becoming an intervener for this project. FERC advised me that as an intervener, I would be forced to send out hundreds of letters. Only later, and from a private source, did I learn I didn't need to send letters, just email copies of any comments that I made. I learned that properties not directly impacted but still within the blast zone in the evacuation of this pipeline are not notified. And I asked FERC how many properties along the 600-mile pipeline are in these zones. FERC's answer, we don't know. We don't go into that level of detail. I'm certain there are over 10,000 properties in harm's way, and FERC doesn't even acknowledge them. FERC refuses to answer most of my questions. They refer me to large, complicated, technically written, and misleading documents filed by the ACP. Many of these documents are hundreds of pages in length. I've asked FERC for an explanation of small parts of these documents. In their response, we don't write them, and it's not our job to interpret them for you. FERC must be interpreting the documents. They're reviewing them for the pipeline application. They just won't interpret them for me. FERC public participation includes public comments to be considered by FERC in their decision-making process. When I ask FERC what comments are most important, FERC doesn't give me an answer. They tell me they need substantive comments. On the other hand, I frequently find specific directions from FERC to the ACP telling them exactly what they need to submit. So it's like a professional football team coming into Little Valley. We're completely outmatched. We hope that FERC will help us or at least referee the mismatch, but instead they're on the other side of the field coaching the team and ignoring us. But in this case, it's not just a game we stand to lose, it's our home and our property. These are only some of the issues that tell me that FERC is not functioning in the public interest. They are functioning solely for the energy industry. I've dealt with many federal agencies. They've always impressed me with their professionalism and dedication to public service. FERC is not one of them. FERC needs to be reformed to serve we the people, we the people, we the people. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dave Riley. I'm chair of and professor of political science at Niagara University, outside of Niagara Falls, New York, a member of the political committee of Sierra Club Niagara, and co-founder of the Citizen Coalition for Wildlife and Environment, which is based in Grand Island, New York, my home. I'm here to speak today about the proposed National Fuel Northern Access Pipeline, which is a 97-mile, 24-inch diameter pipeline beginning in Sargent Township, Pennsylvania, and running across the state into Canada. The project includes a compressor station and a new natural gas dehydration facility. My town of Grand Island is the largest freshwater island in North America. It sits in the middle of the Niagara River, a body of water that runs between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, Great Lakes that are critical United States freshwater reserves. We are upstream from one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. We have a pipeline that runs underneath the river on either side of us and across the width of our island, and has since that land was taken by eminent domain in the late 1990s. And we have no say in that pipeline, no control over what passes through it, whether the flow of fossil fuels changes direction or volume. We are told that it doesn't matter whether we want the pipeline there. We are told that it doesn't matter what the public opposes and changes or demands information on what is happening with the pipeline. We are told that we are irrelevant. And in that regard, our story is no different from the many stories that you will hear today. And there's a reason why the stories are the same wherever you go. These are the stories of people who take on the risk. They are the stories of communities that gain little to nothing from fossil fuel industries. They are stories of corporations that pressure government officials and agencies into deals that put the public in harm's way, while fossil fuel industries bring in obscene profits. The proposed pipeline is routed through poor communities, adjacent to the Superfund sites and ending close to the infamous Love Canal neighborhood that has had more than its fair share of environmental risks and toxic catastrophes that continue to adversely affect the health of neighboring residents and the larger community. These atrocities are compounded by the process of eminent domain that takes land for what are deceptively described as public benefit projects. These are public risk projects, and eminent domain should be called what it is, a subsidy for the fossil fuel industry. It reduces corporation cost, it provides the resources to force through their projects, and it comes at the expense of our communities. National Fuel is asking the Public Service Commission for a rate increase that comes right after the pipeline and storage segment of National Fuel reported earnings of $80 million for 2015, which grew from the prior year. The rate increase will add $42 million to their revenues each year. Why do they need this? In their own words, and I quote, to enhance and ensure safe, reliable service. And because of their, quote, commitment to low-income customers, conservation, and gas expansion initiatives. They already took our land through the subsidy of eminent domain. And in the process, there are many documented stories of National Fuel bullying and intimidating landowners into settling claims. Now they demand money to ensure the fabricated public benefit that was ostensibly the reason for taking that land in the first place. We must demand from our politicians at all levels that government be responsive to the people. We need to reject a process of eminent domain that unfairly takes land from the people in the name of corporate profits. We need to reject a process of evaluation from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and others that ignores environmental risk and the concerns of the public. We need accountability, we need transparency, and we need to educate the public about these risks so that we can speak with one voice, with one purpose, to protect our land, our water, our children, and our future. Thank you.
Bruce Baxter, Sunrise Nursery, Bainbridge, New York. Landowner, tree farmer, taxpayer on this land for over 30 years. My saga starts with Chesapeake Energy offering me $60,000 and a lifetime supply of mailbox money for a lease to drill for gas. After learning of the perils of Dimock, Pennsylvania water, I declined to sell. Then I received letters from Constitution Pipeline wanting to install a 30-inch high-pressure pipeline through my yard. They invited me to the nicest restaurant in the area for a meet and greet. I brought my son, who studied environmental science and horticulture at the University of Maine and graduated from Rutgers. After being greeted by all the execs and then them not being able to BS me, since I once worked in the industry as an equipment operator, close to the owners and knew of the lies, I was passed off to Aubrey McClendon,
who assured me I was going to receive triple my land's value, which the tax assessor appraised at $350,000. Not knowing that I refused to sell my mineral rights, he went on to say, this is actually a feeder line applied for as a prerequisite for fracking in New York. Feeder lines cannot claim eminent domain, nor are regulated by FERC. So this is being sold as an interstate transmission line for eminent domain and lower payouts to landowners. He needs me to sign on so I can collect my mailbox money. My question to him was, really? What if the actual numbers aren't as you promised and it's not worth the offer? His reply was, we will take you by eminent domain since it's been approved by FERC, which he claimed we owned them along with the politicians and judges. FERC would give them my land and the pipe would be in service long before my not yet born grandchildren would get a court date or compensation if they ever do. I offered him a Waco, Texas or Ruby Ridge type of outcome. Now I have New York State troopers guarding me at all events. Then came the FedEx envelope telling me that I am ordered to appear before New York District Court judges Mordew and Treese for mandatory eminent domain and compensation hearing. Constitution came in and appraised my commercial riverfront land with a 5-bedroom, 5-bath, Energy Star rated home and barn at $100,000. Far cry from the $350,000 that the tax assessor appraised it at. Came armed with a check for $3,000 is what they offered me, which is less than a half a year's taxes. The day before my mandatory hearing, I get another FedEx from the not so honorable judges telling me I lost by reason of partial summary judgment, which is explained to me by Liz Whitmer of Saul Ewing, Constitution's law firm. Partial summary judgment is that the gas company won before, so now they have set a precedent and automatically win. Sort of like telling O.J. Simpson that he once got acquitted of murder, now he has a license to kill. The judges ruled against me. This was done without a hearing, gave me $0 and said there's a bond to cover me. Saul Ewing can't tell me where the bond money is. My farming and development rights are gone. My property value is diminished. My land is now an energy corridor in which they can add as many pipes of whatever size they want to transport whatever they want and increase the pressure for even more profits, widening the blast zone with no additional compensation. I'm stuck with the tax bill for the rest of my life. A similar sized pipe incinerated a home and land 400 feet away in Salem, Pennsylvania this past spring. Also burned off the siding off of a house 700 feet away. Constitution Pipeline, what a name, since they just trampled my constitutional 5th and 14th Amendment rights to mandatory court compensation hearing it being against eminent domain for private corporate greed. The next day, Constitution's work crews showed up to do test bores and surveying. Funny, all the jobs they were going to create for the locals, all the workers were from everywhere else but New York, except the state troopers who outnumbered the pipe crew that were there protecting them. But they don't count as they're paid by the New York taxpayers, not the energy company. FERC has been around doing this kind of stuff for 30 years, being paid by the energy companies they're supposed to be monitoring to rubber stamp projects for the energy companies using incomplete/fraudulent draft impact studies and closed-door open public meetings. Until last year when they finally denied one project because we the people exposed them. Not all is bad. I did get an offer to sell my place for the $350,000 it was tax assessed at, until they found out about the eminent domain during the attorney review and canceled the offer. So much for the promises of increased property values, jobs creation, and endless mailbox money. Thank you.
Claude Penn Jr., Olive Branch, Mississippi. Our group is Fair Compensation for Underground Natural Gas Storage on LinkedIn. On January 12, 1954, United Gas Pipeline Company, with the backing of the Federal Power Commission, coerced my grandparents into signing a perpetual lease to allow gas to be stored under their property. A perpetual lease is a lease that can never be canceled. The Mississippi Supreme Court has spoken against perpetual leases, and many states have legislation against perpetual leases. The lease my grandparents were coerced into signing allowed a paltry annual payment of $403 per year to the family. In 2012, the current leaseholder, Boardwalk Pipeline Partners, made $84.7 million from underground storage, including my grandparents' property. I contacted officials at Boardwalk to ask if we could renegotiate the lease. Mr. Fleming said I cannot and will not renegotiate the lease. I contacted an attorney to look at the lease. The attorney said he could not find any chance for renegotiation. I contacted FERC to see if they could talk to Boardwalk about possible renegotiation. FERC refused to contact Boardwalk on my behalf. I submitted an e-comment to the FERC website directing FERC to address my issues on fair compensation. FERC said they will not respond to my e-comment. I have contacted my senators and representatives, federal and state, on the issues of fair compensation. The Rankin County, Mississippi Congressional Representative Greg Harper never responded to any of my mail. I wrote to President Obama requesting help, and he merely forwarded my request back to FERC. A FERC official, Jerry Chang, responded saying they could not help. I contacted Bloomberg, Frontline, and Vice TV to implore them to investigate and expose this violation of the Fifth Amendment affecting thousands of landowners across the United States. The federal government, FERC, and courts have colluded with gas and pipeline companies to illegally take over property from landowners and Native Americans in 31 states across the United States. The courts are using the wrong paradigm, diminution of surface land value to determine compensation. The correct paradigm is the value of the scarce underground caverns to gas and pipeline companies. FERC is illegally using the 1938 Gas Act to take over private property for eminent domain or perpetual lease, to enrich private enterprise with millions of dollars annually with zero compensation to private landowners who are the rightful owners of these valuable underground caverns. The 1938 Gas Act was written for pipelines only, not underground storage. There are only a limited number, 410 underground storage areas in the USA. They are very valuable resources to gas and pipeline companies. Accordingly, gas and pipeline companies should be required to fairly compensate landowners for the use of the resources owned by private landowners. The 1938 Gas Act needs to be rewritten to provide fair compensation to landowners and Native Americans. Gas and pipeline companies need to provide compensation retroactively from the date landowners were coerced into signing leases and threatened with eminent domain if they did not sign. Thank you.
My name is Jacqueline Evans. I'm an intervener in the Penn East pipeline application to FERC and a directly impacted property owner. I'm a single mother of 3 young children living on a certified organic farm in Delaware Township, New Jersey, which is threatened by this project. I'm a founding member of Homeowners Against Land Taking, HALT Penn East, made up of 300 homeowners committed to stopping Penn East because we will not tolerate FERC's abuse of power in rubber stamping incomplete applications that will result in the misuse of eminent domain to steal our homes, farms, children's future for corporate gain and no benefit to our community. FERC is funded by those it regulates and is shirking its duties to follow regulations and federal laws to protect us. This leaves me facing condemnation of my farm, thereby making it impossible to sell. My freedom and well-being of my family put in peril while FERC ignores my questions and concerns. FERC held public hearings where interveners were made to go into a room one by one to speak behind closed doors, driving the point home that we really aren't part of this and that we are merely the cost of doing business in America. My friend and neighbor, Mary Ann Plesher, lost her husband to the stress of trying to save their farm from the pipeline. A week after his death, she received a call from Penny's threatening her to make a deal with him now, or things would get worse for her later. She wrote to FERC about this. However, loyalty to the gas companies seems more important than the abuse of a widow a week after losing her husband. The Pleshers were offered $5 million in 2009. Realtors advised her that with the pipeline, the price was now 1.5. But when an offer came in after she listed her farm, it was withdrawn upon hearing about the Penny's pipeline. Penny's has already stolen thousands of dollars from us as we watch our property values plummet in our community, properties on the line not being able to be sold. What does FERC's eminent domain for corporate gain look like? It's not being able to move across the country to take care of my aging mother. It's not being able to take a mortgage out on my home to pay for my children's college. It's not knowing how I'll be able to afford a new home when there are no buyers for my farm, which I can no longer live on. It's relocating goats, sheep, chickens, ducks, honeybees, dogs, because they no longer have paddocks. It's having the federal government tell me that my children should live in an incineration zone. It's also the loss of feeling safe in our homes, which is one of the most profound losses of all. FERC is threatening everything we hold sacred through its FERC is threatening everything we hold sacred through its corruption, and it must be investigated.